Choose Your Own Adventure, Mountain Survival. So how this is going to work is every time I get to one of the crossroads in the book, I'm going to tell you 2 options or 3 options, or maybe even 4, of where you're supposed to go. So it might be, where do you want to turn left? If you want to turn left, let me try that again. It might say, which way do you want to turn? And it might say, if you want to turn left, go to 6. And if you want to turn right, go to 7. So when we get to one of them choices in the book, first of all, make your decision. So say you decide, okay, I want to go right. It says, if you want to go right, go to 7. So go down into the comments, and I will have a big list of numbers and timestamps. So if you decided to go to 7, you click on the timestamp for number 7, and then you will carry on listening to the book until we get to the next decision. And so that's basically how it's going to work. So anyway, I'm going to start reading it now. And as I say, when we get to the crossroads, you'll have to make a decision. Okay, so we'll start now. You and your pilot, Jake McKay, are flying over the Canadian Rockies when the engine begins to sputter. Suddenly, you've been caught in a blinding snow squall. What seemed like a beautiful spring day has turned into a wintry nightmare. We're going down, Jake cries. And it says at the bottom, turn to page 2, so you don't need to click on a timestamp for that, because page 2 is the next page. Jake is able to set down the plane on a smooth grassy area at the timberline. It hits the ground hard, bounces once and slides into a grove of stunted pine trees. The left wing smashes against the tree and the plane spins wildly out of control and then suddenly stops. Fortunately, you are not hurt, just shaken up a little bit. But Jake's ankles seem sprained. He can't put any weight on it. To make matters worse, the radio has stopped working on impact. The 2 of you hurtle down into your seats and Jake has wrapped his injured ankle on a red plaid scarf. I'm afraid we're pretty far off course. His eyes scanning the map. Our only hope is for you to make it to the ranger station we saw on the way in. It's about 9 miles east of here. It looks abandoned from the air, but it's like most of the stations in this area. It's stocked with canned food and emergency radio transmitter. Go to the next page. You look over at Jake and you know he's trying to encourage you. I'll go, you tell him. You listen carefully as he explains how to send a radio distress signal. Jake does his best to smile. This was just a frontal squall that hit us. Look, the sun's coming out. You better get going so you can reach the station before dark. You check your backpack, which holds a light sleeping bag, a poncho and a day's supply of food, matches and a first aid kit. You're wearing a hooded parka, wool socks, gloves and a good pair of hiking boots. The right clothes for a long hike. And making sure that Jake is comfortable, you strap on your backpack and say goodbye and start walking. And then we go to the next page, so no need to click on anything yet. You set out at a brisk pace along the high, rugged land. It's almost noon. The sun must be in the south. If you keep it on your right, you'll know. If you keep it on your right, you know you'll be headed east. 9 miles doesn't seem like a long distance. On a gentle, well-groomed trail, you could easily cover it in 3 hours, but in these mountains it could take much longer. Within an hour, it has become cloudy again. A cold north wind has sprung up. The temperature is falling. You flip up the collar of your parka trying to keep warm. Now ahead of you, you see what looks like an animal trail running north-south. Alongside it, blocking your way, is a high rock wall too steep to climb. The shortest route around the wall would be to cross the roaring stream to your right. The stream is about 10 feet wide, with water boiling like a white torrent. You can't judge its depth. Probably you can get across by jumping from rock to rock, but one slip and you could be in a lot of trouble. The safest thing to do would be to follow the animal trail through the pine forest to your left, but that would take you in a northerly direction, possibly far out of your way. So now we come to a choice. If you decide to follow the trail to your left, turn to page 8. If you try and cross the stream, turn to page 7. So make your decision, then go down into the comments and click on the appropriate timestamp. And once you've done that, we'll carry on. Keeping the sun on your left, you follow the trail across a high plateau bristling with scrubby pine trees that have managed to survive in the harsh climate. On and on you trudge through the strange, beautiful landscape until at last you see a tiny cabin ahead of you. It must be the other ranger station. You rush into the cabin and take stocks of its content: matches, firewood, a small wood stove, plenty of food, and a backpack filled with emergency gear and a radio. You quickly get a fire going and start heating a pot of soup. You'll soon be enjoying hot soup with biscuits with honey. Meanwhile, you follow instructions for sending distress signals on the radio. The set is of the simplest kind, designed only for one-way emergency transmission. You send out a call for help, but you can't be sure your signal's being heard. Now you should turn to page 10. So click on timestamp 10. You walk along the raging stream looking for a place to cross. In a little while you come to a section that is strewn with boulders. You tighten your backpack and you leap from rock to rock. You're almost across when your right foot comes down on a loose rock, throwing you off balance into the icy water. Spray flies in your face and you frantically clutch the jammed log and then half swim, half wade into the opposite bank. Now you should turn to page 9, timestamp 9 in the comments. Following the trail to your left, you head north along the edge of the granite wall that blocks your way to the east. You go higher and higher in its long, exhausting climb, but it seems to be the only safe way over the mountain. At last you plateau well above the timberline. Your route east is no longer blocked, and you strike out across the high, barren terrain, glad to be headed towards the ranger station. Though the way is clear now, you are opposed to a powerful wind. Within heavy moments, a heavy bank of clouds sweep across the mountains. Suddenly, the squall hits you. You try and stay calm. All you can see through the driving snow is the ground beneath your feet and the blurred outline of nearby rocks, using the wind as a compass. Its direction seems to be holding steady from the north. You try and keep on course. Then you see a hollow place in the rocks, almost like a cave, and a refuge from the wind and snow. Maybe you should take shelter until the weather improves. Then you remember Jake. He's counting on you to help him. It's hard to think clearly, so you're cold and miserable. You wonder whether you should keep moving in spite of the storm. And so, if you want to continue on, turn to page 12. If you take shelter, turn to page 37. So, go down into the comments and make your choice. You're soaked to the skin and shivering so hard you can barely breathe. You try and warm up by walking, heading southeast along the base of the rock wall, but if you can find a place to scale it, you can head straight east again, towards the ranger station, but you plunge into the stream as you're badly chilled. You're not sure that you can carry on. There's some brushwood and dry pine branches nearby. It's a good idea to start a fire and dry off completely. You thought you'd had plenty of matches, but one pack is soaked, and the pack that stayed dry has almost one match left. Should you use your last match? Maybe it's important to keep moving. If you take time to build a fire and warm up, you may not reach the ranger station before dark. If you stop to build a fire, turn to page 11. If you continue on, turn to page 14. So go down into the comments and click on the appropriate timestamp. The night. A wild storm howls outside, but you sleep well. After a good breakfast, you get on the radio and try and send more distress signals. If you could be sure that someone was receiving them, it's hard to just wait. A map on the wall shows a road only 15 miles farther east, but in the mountains you never get that far in one day. You would have had to sleep outside overnight, and if you got lost, you and Jay might never make it off the mountain alive. If you decide to hike to the road, turn to page 37. If you decide to wait for help, turn to page 59. You gather some dry pine branches and twigs, taking great care to shield your only match from the wind. You light the fire. It catches. Soon you have a good blaze going. It takes a couple of hours for you to get really warm and dry. Now you must hurry. The sky is darkening, the wind is blowing stronger, and a fine light snow is stinging your cheeks. Continuing on a few hundred yards, you discover a trail up the rock wall, a steep mountain gully. The center line of the gully looks like it's the easiest way up, but you're concerned about the big rocks near the top. Some of them look pretty loose. Maybe you should climb up the side of the gully, even though it's steeper and the footing is less secure. You have a vague memory of someone saying that you shouldn't climb up the center line of a mountain gully. Or did they say you shouldn't climb up the side of a gully? You can't remember. If you climb up the side of the gully, turn to page 21. If you climb up the center line of a gully, turn to page 25. Gritting your teeth, you struggle on. You are determined to keep moving. You manage to reach a ledge that is sheltered from the full force of the wind. From here you are going to have to climb steeply upward, up the high ridge of the mountain. Climbing is hard work, but footing is secure. The snow lets up, and visibility improves. You make good progress up the slope, climbing higher and higher, until you find yourself above the clouds hanging over the valley. Got a cough. Elsewhere you look, snow-capped peaks just jut up into the crystalline sky. You have never seen such a view. You keep climbing, but you have to breathe a lot harder now. You start to cough. I'm going to have to take a drink, hang on. Where was I? Soon you have a headache and you begin to feel dizzy. Yet you are quite warm from the hard work of climbing, and not in immediate danger of developing hypothermia, because becoming dangerously chilled. Should you struggle to the top, it can't be more than 300 feet to the crest of the ridge, or should you retreat back down the mountain, giving up the ground you've so painfully won? If you keep climbing, turn to page 96. If you go back down the mountain, turn to page 15. You continue on, skirting the southeast edge of the rock wall, looking for a way up, but the cold wind penetrates your wet clothes, your teeth chatter as you stumble on. Hunched over against the cold, your vision begins to blur and you're getting short of breath. Your legs look like rubber. You stumble over a rock and fall. You try and get up, but lurch crazily from side to side and then sink back into the ground. You sleep there in a heap, shaking, too weak, looking for shelter. Dimly you realise what has happened. Your body temperature has fallen dangerously low. There's no doubt about it. You've got symptoms of advanced hypothermia. I've got a cough. Your body is losing heat faster than it can generate it. If only you had started a fire and warmed yourself. Now it's too late. The end. So that's the end of the video for you. If you want to start again, go ahead, start again. Reluctantly, you retrace your steps and go down the video. By the time you've descended about 1,000 feet, you're feeling a lot better. From your present vantage point, you can see a snowfield that fills a broad valley, a mile or so wide. Lying between two peaks from the direction of the sun, you've decided to go east across the snowfield. Is probably the best route for the ranger station. Fortunately, the snow is packed hard. You won't break through the crusts. Within a few hours, you're able to travel halfway across the field. There's still a chance of reaching the ranger station by dark, but the weather is becoming a problem. You know that the weather can change with a frightening suddenness in the mountains, and that's what's happening now. The sun is gone, and it's started to snow, and stiff wind is blowing, stinging your cheeks and nose and clouding your eyes. You slog onward, but the storm worsens. Soon you realise you're facing blizzard conditions. If you push on, turn to page 63. If you dig a snow cave and crawl inside for shelter, turn to page 22. The moment Chauncey is free, he grabs a shotgun. I know how to use this, he says. A moment later, Gino returns. Chauncey points the shotgun at him and backs into the corner. While Chauncey guards Gino, you try and get the radio working. Trial and error, you're able to make it work, and by sunset you're in touch with the Royal Canadian Mountain Police. Don't let your prisoner move, the Mounties tell you. We'll have a helicopter there at dawn. You and Chauncey exchange glances. It's going to be a long, tense night. Gino is beginning to look nervous. Maybe you should try and tie him up so he can't jump you. If you tell Chauncey to hold the gun on Gino while you tie him up, turn to page 99. If you tell Chauncey he should go and watch Gino, turn to page 104. Keeping the sun on your right, you follow the trail. It's marked from time to time by little piles of rocks. You are nearing civilization. With any luck, you'll be reaching the next ranger station before dark. By noon, you've been descended well below the tree line. Now the trail is marked by little white markings, painting on scrubby pine trees along the way. You're really hungry, so you perch on a rock and feast on crackers and peanut butter from your food pack. You'd like to lie back and nap for a while, but you know you've got to keep moving. The wind is picking up, the sky is darkening, and the temperature is dropping every minute. Go to the next page. You hurry along. The ranger station can be more than 3 or 4 miles away, judging by the fast progress you've made. But the sky darkens and the snow begins to fly. There is a scattered little flakes at first, and then it begins to snow heavily. The wind howls and the chilly blast beginning working through your parka. You're not only getting cold, you're getting scared. You open up your food pack and you eat some peanut butter. You need extra energy, extra calories. Even the peanut butter tastes cold. But you strap your pack on again and get moving. Can't waste time. The visibility is getting worse and the snow thickens. But you keep up your pace, travelling along the side of the mountain. By now you're feeling pretty sure that you've covered most of the distance from the last cabin. There can't be more than a mile or so to reach the shelter and the radio. Though the hard driving snow, you see a rock overhang the arches around, forming what looks like a tiny cave. Should you take shelter or wait for the storm to let up? Or should you keep going? If you take shelter, turn to page 37. If you keep going, turn to page 27. It's a long, exhausting climb up the side of the gully. About halfway up, huge boulders crash down the centre, scarring you out of your wits. Fortunately, you are clear of its path, and in about half an hour you reach the crest. You look over the plateau. Much of the land is wooded by dwarf pines. Some is only barren rock with patches of snow here and there. It's about 3 o'clock, and you know the ranger station lies east, but the sun is hidden by the clouds, so you can't be sure which way east is. You think you'll be heading east if you follow the creek to your left. You've always thought you had a pretty good sense of direction, but you recall that the cliffs and the ridges in this area generally run north-south. Maybe you're heading east now, even though east seems to be your left. Even if it is, you follow the creek, and you'll be heading north instead of east. If you continue straight ahead, turn to page 56. If you trust your sense of direction and follow the creek, turn to page 28. You know you have to find shelter. You can't go far in a mountain blizzard. Even if you did, you would never be able to keep going in the right direction. Searching about, you notice a rock ledge where a deep pocket of snow has been trapped. It's your only chance to escape from the storm. Using your only gloved hands, you begin to dig a tunnel in the south bank. Luckily, the snow is firm but not iced over, and you make good progress, slowly opening up a tunnel big enough to crawl into headfirst. Exhausted by your efforts but grateful to be out of the driving wind and snow, you keep digging until you've widened the tunnel enough so that you can turn around and face the opening. You must keep an airway clear or you'll suffocate. You need to keep up your body heat so that you eat the last of your chocolate. It helps. You're winning the battle against the cold, at least for the moment. You climb into your sleeping bag and close your eyes. When the blizzard rages through the night, you sleep fitfully, occasionally checking to make sure your airway's open. Turn to page 24. Off you go. This brook has never been properly fished. The trout are not wary. You take off your boots and your socks and you wade in the brook very, very slowly, trying not to scare off the fish. You hold your poncho like a net and you're slowly working under the biggest fish. You get ready to catch the trout and slip it out of the water. In a flash it darts away. Again you try and again. Each time the fish eludes you. If only you had a real net, that would be easy. Turn to page 64. By dawn, the storm is over. A brilliant sun is shining in the new fallen snow. You must be on your way, but you're not sure you have the strength to reach the ranger station, or that you could even find it. Perhaps it would be wise to spend your energy another way by stamping out the word help in the snow in big letters big enough to be noticed by a plane flying overhead, or it would take a couple of hours and nearly all your energy to do it. But that might be the best plan. If you stamp out the word help in the snow, turn to page 49. If you continue on your way, turn to page 33. You start up and the light in the center line of the gully. Once in a while you slip on the loose shale, but you make steady progress. You're about halfway to the top when you hear a thunderous sound above you. A huge grey boulder is roaring down the gully straight at you. Bits and pieces of the rock shale from it, sending clouds of dust into the air. You try and scramble up the side of the gully, but you don't have the extra few seconds you need. The end. That's the end of the video for you. You may start again if you wish. You decide it's better to keep moving towards your goal. You quicken your pace, sure that your hike is almost over. The visibility worsens, the harsh wind howls around you. You can no longer see the outline of the ridge. There's no chance of finding your way back to the rock shelter. You've got to keep moving, if only to stay warm. On and on you struggle, your teeth clench, your cheeks and nose freezing. Maybe there's a chance you keep telling yourself you can't give up. It's hard to believe the storm could get worse, but it does. The wind whips your half-frozen nose and cheeks, your eyes blinded by a fiercely driven snow that attacks your face like a swarm of angry hornets. The bitter cold locks your face in deadly grip. Exhausted you fall, a brave victim of nature's fury. The end. And that's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. You decide that you have to trust your own sense of direction. You turn left and follow the creek. After travelling another hour, you see a ridge up ahead. You go eagerly towards it. From the top of the ridge, you hope to be able to see the ranger station. Suddenly, about 40 yards away, looking right at you, you see a huge bear. It's a grizzly one of the largest, meanest, and most dangerous bears in the world. It takes a step towards you, and then another, and then stops and stares and decides what to do. It rears up and stands at full height, 7 feet tall. Is it about to charge? If you stay absolutely still so as not to alarm the bear, turn to page 34. If you run for your life, turn to page 61. No, Jake, you've got a bad leg. You've got to get to a doctor. Thanks, kid, he says. I'll never forget this, and don't worry, they'll be back for you in a few hours. You help Jake into a harness dangling from the helicopter. A few moments later, he swings into the air, and you catch as he is hauled back into the cockpit. You're glad he is saved, but you can't help thinking about yourself. It looks as if you're a sort of hero, but you might soon be a dead one. Just as Jake disappears into the helicopter, a thick bank of fog blows up the mountain, blocking your visibility. You can barely see down the plane a few feet away. Suddenly you hear a thud. A dark shape has landed in the snow, something that fell out of the helicopter as it zoomed away. Turn to page 36. You pack up your sleeping bag, 2 boxes of waterproof matches, a jar of honey and some chocolate bars. You head east. The first day you cover about half the distance of the highway. Exhausted, the fast pace you've set, you have a quick supper of biscuits, nuts and dried apples, and eat chocolate for a dessert, and turn in for the night. You're awakened at dawn by a hard driving rain. Your sleeping bag is soaked through, and you're wet and shivering, dangerously chilled, and hypothermia could set in, and you must build a fire fast. The trees around you are all young evergreens, dry twigs, branches all scarce, but you find a few. Soon you have a small fire going, but you need wood, and plenty of it. You can't find any sticks, but you know you must find some pine boughs and heap them in your tiny fire to keep the blaze going. If only you had an axe. You rub your hands and trying to keep them warm. In a few seconds, your little fire flickers out. You find more twigs and start another fire, but the same thing happens. Now it's sleeting hard. You realise that your luck has run out. You're too sick to go on. You're never going to make it off the mountain. The end. And that's the end for you. If you want to start again, go to the start of the video. You can't bring yourself to gamble everything on stamping out a rescue signal. So you've set out to walk across the snowfield. Fortunately, you're able to walk your way to a rocky ridge where the snow has almost been blown clear. You can tell by the sun that you're on that right course, headed east, and your hopes rise. After about a mile, the ridge slopes gently to the south. To the east, the mountain wall drops off sharply, and you can only descend with a rope. You have to take the long way down the mountain slope. The wind has blown and the snow into deep drifts. You're doing a lot of extra walking going around them. At last, you have a good view of the open slope that descends on the. At last, you have a good view of an open slope that descends to the tree line. You see something about a mile away that sends a shudder through your spine. It's a plane that brought you to this forsaken mountain. You've been travelling in a circle. Turn to page 38. You stand as still as a statue. A moment later, the bear drops back and forth and shakes itself and lumbers on. You wait a few minutes and then cautiously continue to the top of the ridge of the slope. Sheltered by some pine trees, is a small wooden structure. For a minute you think you might be in the ranger station, but you throw open a rickety door and you realise that it's only an abandoned trapper's cabin. Empty except for a couple of old chairs and a wooden crate that must have served as a table. Nearly on the floor is a crumbled piece of yellow paper. You pick it up and straighten it out as flat as possible. It's a simple map of the area, and it looks like this. Go to the next page. This map is your best clue to the direction of the ranger station. You take it out and look around. The creek you followed to get here curves to the left of the cabin. Just beyond the cabin there is a trail which goes only a few yards and then splits into two separate trails. One to the left, the other to the right. If you continue to follow the creek, turn to page 112. If you take the left fork of the trail, turn to page 42. If you take the right fork of the trail, turn to page 46. For a moment you're afraid that the object is poor Jake, afraid that his line broke as they were hauling him aboard. But as you move closer you see that it's a package with letters stenciled in it. Emergency pack. It takes about half an hour to drag the pack back to the plane. But it's well worth for the trouble, for inside is a portable heater and a stove and a fuel and a peanut butter and a tin of crisps and cookies and dried fruit and a canned tuna and soup and chocolate and everything you need, and you're not sure whether you're hungry or tired, but you're glad to see the biggest items is down-filled sleeping bag rated for temperatures down to 30 below. With the wind roars and still another snowstorm rages, you cook dinner and then crawl into a fluffy sleeping bag. You're trapped in a blizzard in the mountain wilderness, but you've never felt better. The end. You duck into the cave. What a relief to be out of the wind and snow. You grope your way deeper inside. The ground is soft. You take off your glove and you feel pine needles and twigs. Getting down on your hands and knees, you sweep them into a mound. You lay in your sleeping bag and on this crudely fashioned bed and warily snuggle into it. Where the storm rages outside, you sleep. Turn to page 41. You hate to face Jake with the news, but there's nothing to do now but to go onto the plane. At last you'll have shelter tonight. At least you'll have shelter tonight, but you know that the time and energy you've been wasted is fatal to both of you. You hurry to the plane. There was no sound coming from it. Maybe Jake is asleep. But you don't want to think about that. You pull open the door of the plane. Jake is sleeping next to the radio. Jake, I'm sorry, but I couldn't find the ranger station. Jake sits up with a start as you blurt out the words. A big grin lights up on his face. Hey, I'm glad to see you. I've got the radio working. The case was cracked, but it works. I need to rig up the antenna. I couldn't do it without you. And there's one can of soup left. Heat it up on the stove, will you? The cold is getting to me. A few minutes you have the antenna rigged up and the radio working. The welcome message comes back. Help is on the way. Go to the next page. The night you sleep soundly and early the next morning you hear the sound of a helicopter overhead, but in the subarctic mountain wilderness, good luck rarely holds for long. Dark clouds have been building in the west and the wind is rising in the near gale force. The chopper pilot radios that because of the extraordinary winds he must lighten his load and shorten the flying time. He can only take one of you on his trip. You go, Jake, you say. You've got a bad leg. No, kid, says Jake. I can't stand the cold better than you. Go ahead. Should you go first or leave Jake behind? Or should you insist that he goes first? If you insist that Jake goes first, turn to page 30. If you agree to go first, turn to page 52. You awaken to the morning light shining in your cave. The sun is bright and the wind has died down and you feel stiff and your bones ache. You are very hungry but your spirits are high. You've survived the night in the worst weather you've ever experienced. Before you leave, you look around the inside of the cave. The sunshine reveals some lumpy objects that were exposed by your sweeping efforts the night before. You look at them closely and you see that the cave has served as a refuge for a mountain explorer once before. There's a moldy canvas pack, a pick, a shovel, and some rope in a frayed leather pouch. Then your eyes fasten on a pile of whitened bones and you realise you've spent the night with a human skeleton. Turn to page 68. You follow the left fork of the trail along what seems to be a natural passageway between jagged peaks and that rise thousands of feet either side of you. Some of the nearby rocks glisten yellow and brown specks. What is that stuff? It's gold ore. It's gold ore. You've made a big discovery. If you can just get out alive, and as you hurry along, you see more of this precious ore. How can there be so much of it? Then it dawns of you. It can't be real gold you've been looking at. But only the common mineral, pyrite, better known as fool's gold. A moment later you realise you've made an even bigger mistake, for your path ahead is blocked by great rock walls that curve around both sides. You've reached the end of the trail. You backtrack, moving as fast as you can over the rough uphill terrain. Finally you reach a deserted cabin once again, but 2 precious hours of daylight have been wasted. Now you must choose between the other 2 paths, the one left along the creek or the one to the right. Once again you look at the crumpled old map you found in the cabin. If you follow the creek, turn to page 112. If you take the right fork, turn to page 46. Because of the season and the high latitude, darkness is a couple of hours away. Thank goodness for that. After half an hour of walking, you come to a small cabin. For the first time, you feel sure you're going to make it, and more luck, the door is unlocked. You walk in and look around. There's a fireplace, some matches, and in a corner a large pile of wood. The cabin is as cold as inside as out, but the fire will soon fix that. The furniture is simple and sturdy, and a sturdy table, a couple of chairs and a double bunk, and a wood-burning stove with pots and pans hanging over the wall behind it. Tucked up over the table is a good-sized map of the area, and there's a red arrow on it. Next to the arrow are the words, "You are here." The logging road you've been following is clearly shown on the map. You can see where it runs in the main highway. You measure the distance against the scale shown on the map. It can't be more than a mile. Turn to page 113. Wearily you start back up the trail. You've just started to climb a rock ledge where you hear a low snarl. You look up. A mountain lion with fangs barred is crouched on the ledge to your right, its muscles tense. The big cat leaps. You raise your arms to protect your face. You expect it to sink its teeth into your shoulder. Instead everything is quiet. You lower your arms. The cat jumped onto a rock higher up. It looks down at you, flicks its tail, and then bounds away. View. Turn to page 47. The path to the right is a fairly gentle one. You make good progress across the high plateau dotted with groves of stubby pines, the only trees that can survive at this high altitude. Finding that map in the abandoned cabin was a stroke of luck. Without it, you would hopelessly be lost. But now you feel sure that you're heading the right way. You continue on hour after hour, but your strength is failing. It's all you can do to put one heavy foot in front of the other. You only have one thought: to keep moving. Turn to page 56. As your heartbeat returns to normal, you realise that you don't have the energy to climb back up to the cabin. You're past the point of no return. You'll just have to follow the trail and hope it will lead to civilization. The path continues to descend, taking you well below the timberline. Pine trees rise above you on either side. You're grateful for their protection from the wind, but your view is poor, and it would be in a tunnel. The light is fading even in the long subarctic twilight. You must have no more than an hour of daylight left. As the creek bed descends through the thickening forest, the light fades even more quickly. You find a mossy place to make camp. Exhausted, you sleep. Turn to page 51. Betting everything on your plan, you begin to stamping back and forth in the deep snow. Just to make the first line in the letter H, you walk 40 steps in a straight line, then you go back and forth along the same line and make it wider. Once you finish the first line, the H, you make the crossbar the same way, going back and forth, back and forth. It's hard work, but the exercise has warmed you up. The sun is shining brightly and the wind has eased. After about 2 hours, you finish hell. You're exhausted. The last of your food is gone. You no longer have the strength to walk. Turn to page 101. A brilliant sun has risen over the mountains when you awaken. Rested but weak and hungry, with a heavy heart, you stare at the beautiful, desolate landscape. You're about half a mile from the You're about half a mile from shore on a large, mostly frozen lake. Whatever snow has fallen has melted and refrozen into a hard, rough surface. You can hardly make it to the rocky shore, but beyond that, in all directions, lies a dense forest that leads up to forbidding mountains of rock and ice. You'll be able to keep warm in your sleeping bag, but there's not much chance of finding food, and you have no way of signaling for help. There's no chance of your climbing those mountains. All you have left is hope. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the book. During the night, you are awakened by the sound of rain. Water's dripping through the roof of the pine boughs. You roll over... lost my place. You roll over to a dried spot. The scent of wet pine trees is sweet and fragrant. You doze off again. You awaken, the sun is shining, and you get up, stretch, and walk over the stream cascading down the creek bed. You cup your hands in the stream and drink. The cool fresh water tastes good. You eat a chocolate bar for breakfast, and then you're on your way. After a while, the creek joins a roaring brook, which you follow downstream. You come to a section of the brook that is partly dammed, forming a deep pool. You spot a couple of trout near the rock overhang. You suddenly realise how hungry you are. Perhaps you could net a fish in your poncho. Should you take your time to try and risk chilling yourself by wading in the cold water? If you continue on, turn to page 62. If you try and catch a fish, turn to page 23. Thanks, Jake, you say. Wasting no time, you buckle yourself into the harness suspended from the helicopter. The co-pilot cranks a handle, pulling you towards the hovering chopper. Suddenly you see a thick bank of fog flowing up the slope of the mountain. By the time they haul you aboard, visibility is zero. The co-pilot shoves a pack of emergency supplies out the door. I hope Jake can get these, he says. The chopper shudders. The chopper shudders in the gusting wind. The engine revs and changes in pitch as the aircraft flies off to the east. You gaze out at the grey nothingness. We'll be lucky to get out of here, the co-pilot says. Fog, gales, blizzards, the weatherman is throwing everything he has at these mountains. When do you think we can get back to pick up Jake, you ask? The pilot shakes his head. Right now I'm just trying to get us through this soup. But this wind is incredible. I'm afraid we won't have enough fuel. I'm going to fly with the wind and hope we reach the landing strip at Bighorn. Turn to page 55. You look at the cluttered cabin. Near the forward hatch is a small pack of marked signal flares. Near the rear hatch is another pack labelled flashlight and matches. Under the seat ahead of you is a storage rack marked sleeping bags. The pilot is muttering something about Eagle Lake when you doze off. The next thing you hear is, a voice cries, "We're going down!" You brace yourself as a chopper smashes into ice and skids along crazily. Flames break out at the side of the craft, splits open. You only have a few seconds if you're going to get out alive. Time to grab only one thing. If you grab the signal flares, turn to page 72. If you grab the pack with the matches and the flashlight, turn to page 80. If you grab a sleeping bag, turn to page 95. You continue straight ahead through the rocky terrain, studded with clumps of stubby pine trees. You glimpse at the luminous disk of the sun as the clouds thin momentarily. That was lucky. You were beginning to veer too far from the south. You head more to the left and quicken your pace. Suddenly you see the ranger station on a ridge up ahead. The crudely built shack at the edge of the tree line looks as beautiful as a palace to you. You run towards it and throw open the unlocked door and look inside. There is a pack labelled emergency food, a rickety cog, an axe, and a can filled with matches, but no radio. Your eyes rest on the paper tapped to the wall. On it are written the words, "There is a radio in the nearest ranger station, 8 miles to the south. Compass bearing 180 degrees. Turn to the next page. 8 miles farther, all the walking you've done. You don't want to take another step. It's not fair, but that's the reality of the situation. It's not fair, but that's the reality of the situation. You curl up on the cot, knowing that you must be on your way at dawn. You're exhausted from your trip and you fall asleep instantly. Shortly after the daybreak, you awaken to the sound of roaring wind. Dark clouds are racing by overhead and the smell of air are cold and damp, as if snow's on the way. You open a can of soup and heat it on the tiny alcohol stove in the hut. The soup is hot, along with some stale biscuits spread with little honey. Makes you feel 100 times better. But now you have 8 miles to go over rugged wild land. As you step outside, you find a trail leading behind the cabin. You know the ranger station is to the south. So should you keep the morning sun on your left or on your right? If you keep the sun on your left, turn to page 5. If you keep the sun on your right, turn to page 18. Two weeks have passed since your rescue. You're back home, laughing at a postcard from Jake. "I've decided to move to Florida," he writes, "where the highest mountain is only 300 feet high." Suddenly you hear the sound of a helicopter landing right outside your house. You run to see Chauncey and 2 men stepping onto the lawn. Chauncey runs to greet you, and then introduces you to his father and the chopper pilot. "I came to thank you for rescuing my son," says Mr. Van Dyne. Mr. Van Dyne says, "and to pay you for the $50,000 reward I offered for Chauncey's safe return." Later, after the Van Dynes have left, you put on a check for $50,000 on your top bureau drawer. You'll deposit it in the bank tomorrow. As you think about your good fortune, you remember the leather pouch you took from the cave up on the mountain. You rolled it up in your backpack and never got around to looking inside it. You pull the backpack out of your closet. The pouch is there. You open it and carefully lift out the tattered sheet of paper. Go to page 111. The more you think about it, the more you think you'd be better to stay put. If the radio works signaling your location, and a rescue helicopter would probably be better sent to where you are, you've got to be waiting, ready to lead the rescue team to Jake. The cabin is safe, there's plenty of firewood, you'll have no problem keeping warm. You could live here for days with no problem, but Jake needs Jake needs help right away. You keep looking at the radio, hoping you are heard. 2 nights had passed. At the first, the weather was bad, snow, sleet, and high winds, and you were glad you stayed in the cabin, but this morning the sun rose in a cloudless sky. You can hardly bear the thought of staying in the cabin another day. Most of all, you're worried about Jake. He must be hungry and weak, and now that you know the way, you could bring him food and make a fire and warm him. But you've learnt at this altitude the weather can change very fast. If you leave the safety of the cabin, you might never get back to the plane. If you decide to set out for the plane, turn to page 73. If you say in the cabin, turn to page 105. You run as fast as you ever have in your life. The ground is rough, you stumble, screaming, you get back on your feet and run. The bear is charging. There's no chance of outrunning him. There's no place to hide. There's no chance of escape. The end. That's the end of the video. You can go back to the start if you wish. You continue on. No use wasting your energy and warmth trying to catch fish. The brook will surely lead to a road or at least a river. If you keep heading downstream, you'll find civilization. After 6 more hours of rugged hiking, you begin to lose hope. The brook twists and turns so much that you've probably covered only 2 or 3 miles. It may be more sheltered down in the valley than up in this mountain, but your view is blocked by the towering pine trees. Worse, another storm is approaching. A cold, wet rain laced with sleet is whipping your face, and you've finished the last of your food and you're near the point of exhaustion. You need to build a fire. You pull out your matches, but they're sticky and damp, and you try and strike them, but they turn into mush. Painfully, you stumble on and then fall onto the ground. You're now sure for the last time. It's all over for you. Turn to page 66. You push on, determined to get help for Jake. Gusts of wet snow swirl through the air. You can hardly see the ground ahead of you. You'd love to sit down and rest, but you'd never be able to get up again. You keep moving. Your senses blur. Your brain clouds as if you're on the edge of a rugged sleep. But you are still conscious when your right foot comes down on nothing but air. Air that fans your face as you plunge over a 1,200-foot high cliff. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. You'll never catch a fish that way. The sound of a human voice startles you. Looking around, you see a man with a stubby beard looking down from you from a rock on the other side of the brook. As you wade out of the water, the man jumps down from the perch. Nick Keegan is my name, he says, and I'll bet I'm more surprised to see you than you are to see me. How do you happen to be here fishing in a way that will never catch fish? You quickly explain about the plane crash. How can we get help for my friend Jake, you ask? We'll do the only thing we can do, Nick replies. Follow me. Turn to page 67. You bury your head into your arms, too exhausted to even cry. At that moment you hear a rumbling noise. It grows louder and then fades until it was all silent again. But what was that sound? Suddenly you realise it was a truck, on a road. The highway can't be more than 100 yards away. Hope fills you with a new energy. In a moment you're on your feet, almost running through the forest, through the trees, and you see the endless concrete strips that tells you you are a survivor. The end. Congratulations, you've had a good ending there. If you want to start again, go to the start of the video. As he leads you through the woods, Nick explains that he's a fur trapper and he's probably the only human being within 20 miles of where you are. You are 10 miles of the nearest road, he tells you. Once the two of you have arrived at his cabin, Nick is able to reach the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on his radio. They're sending a helicopter with a rescue team right away, he tells you, but the weather is getting worse. Fog and snow, squalls at higher elevations. I can tell them where the cabin is, but it's up to you to tell me where your plane went down. Judging from what you've said, I'd guess it's got to be either on the Broadback Mountain, which is north of us, or Mount Chilmark to the south. Which do you say? You unfold the map and try and retrace your steps. Have you been travelling mostly north, where the plane crashed, or mostly south? If you say the rescue team should search for Mount Chilmark to the south, turn to page 82. If you advise them to search Broadback Mountain, turn to the north, turn to page 100. What traveller came to this cave, you wonder? When did he come? What happened to him? Too fine to think about it. You stuff your pouch in your backpack and you go on your way. The weather may not last. You work your way along the long rock ridge, happy to find a path where the wind has blown most of the snow away. After hours you travel, gradually descending to a more protected area. A group of pine trees dot the wilderness landscape and you descend farther, and then the path rises again. Around noon you finally reach the crest of the ridge. From this point you can see smoke rising from the stovepipe sticking to the roof of the tumbled down cabin. It doesn't look like a ranger station, but who cares? Someone must be there. Turn to page 71. They found you. A plane has spotted your fire. When the helicopter landed at your lonely campsite, you used a bit of your strength to climb into it, and then you collapsed. Only now you have regained consciousness. You're in a hospital room. A doctor and a nurse are standing nearby, smiling down at you. Then a dark thought flashes through your mind. Did they find Jake? You ask. You can come in now, sir. The doctor calls someone into the hall. A moment later, a man on crutches hobbles into your room. It's Jake, with one leg in a cast but a grin on his face, almost as wide as yours. The end. Congratulations. If you want to start the story again, go to the start of the video. You hurry across the new fallen snow towards the cabin. The first thing you see when you look through the window is a table near the door. It's covered with bread and cheese and sandwiches and fruit and nuts and chocolate, and then you see something that chills you even more than the cold you've endured. A boy, a year or so younger than you, tied to a chair, his head tilted to one side as if he was asleep. The other side of the cabin is a burly man with the meanest face you've ever seen. He seems to be asleep too, and you're beginning to hope that he is. Right next to him, leaning against the wall, is a hunting knife with a long blade and a double-barreled shotgun. The cabin door is open a crack. You pause at the door, wondering what to do. You need food, and the boy seems to be in a lot of trouble. On the other hand, you've got to help Jake, and you don't think you're going to get it here. If you continue on your way, turn to page 83. If you decide to slip in, grab some food and run, turn to page 88. If you try and grab the gun and the knife, turn to page 89. You grab the flares and jump into the icy surface. There is an explosion behind you. You look back in time to see the fiery remains of the helicopter sink into a hole in the ice. The chopper drops out of sight, carrying two crew members along with it. You are alone in utter darkness. The suddenness and horror of it sends shivers through your spine. You feel as if the furies of doom have been loosened upon the earth, and there is no more hope for you than the two brave pilots now entombed at the bottom of the lake. But you have no time to mourn. You must think of your own survival. At least you're off the mountain. The temperature here is freezing. Maybe you can make it through the night, but then what? You have no idea how far the helicopter travelled before it went down. You have a compass, but you don't know which way to go. The ice is not thick. The helicopter cracked it instantly. You'll have to be careful. Turn to page 76. You pack up as much food and supplies as you can carry and begin to retrace your steps to the plane. Fortunately, the weather holds. You've rested, you have plenty of food, you know the way, and you have surprising energy. In a few days, you've been in the mountain wilderness. You've grown used to the high altitude, and you become leaner, tougher, and smarter. The sun has set, and the darkness is creeping up, and the valley when you reach the plane. Jake's in bad shape, cold, shivering, and weak, and you can tell that his leg is hurting more than he'll admit. But in a few minutes you'll have a good fire going outside the plane. It radiates warmth into the cockpit. Soon you have a hot soup ready, and Jake sips it and grins, and says, "I don't know if I could have made it through the night if you hadn't come back." Turn to page 75. You drink your soup and look at the moon rising over the mountain. You're thankful that you and Jake are safe for the moment, but the two of you are still marooned. When no help comes the next day, you begin to worry. By mid-afternoon the second day, you are sure that you and Jake will never be rescued. Then an airplane swoops out of the sky, dipping its wings. You and Jake let out a whoop of joy. The next morning, a helicopter sets down and lifts the two of you off the mountain. The pilot shakes your hand, and as you climb aboard the chopper, "You've got what it takes," he says. The end. Congratulations. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. As you stand there trying to think, the full moon breaks through the clouds. The lake seems vast, but you can't move more than half a mile from shore. And the ice appears to be solid all the way. But then what? The moon's cold, pale light is reflected into the icy mountains around you. You open a box of flares and read the words, To fire, hold upright at arm's length, and pull pin. Suppose I fire a flare, you wonder. Who would ever say it? You walk very cautiously towards the shore. Before you've covered half the distance, the moon disappears behind the mountain, and you're left in darkness. A wave of fear sweeps over you. In a day or two, you could be alive in this climate. You'd never climb over those glacier-strewn mountains. You're trapped. Turn to page 79. You start talking to Gino the moment he comes back. You don't feel friendly, but you act friendly, saying everything you can to win Gino's confidence. You find out that he's almost as scared as you are, and Chauncey are. Scared that the police will swoop in, scared that his partner will take off with millions of dollars, and most of all, scared of the idea of killing you. "I don't have $1 million, but I wish I could help you," you say. "About all I could offer you is my bike." Gino smiles grimly. "Wouldn't do me much good, I'm afraid. I'm going to need a space shuttle to get away from all the cops that will ever be after me. I guess I'm going to have to forget about my $500,000 share." The pink glow that filled the cabin has faded. The sun has set. Gino fingers the shotgun. He stands up and looks at you for a long time, and then looks at Chauncey. Suddenly, he raises the gun and swings around. Turn to page 84. You try to think clearly. The flare's dawn will be breaking soon. There will be little use once daylight comes. You take one of the flares out of the box and hold it upright at arm's length and pull the pin. Nothing happens. A dud. You try the same thing with another flare. Again, nothing happens. Who made these flares, you wonder? Only 2 left. You hold one of them. Whoosh! The rocket flares out of your hands towards the sky, sending a brilliant red flare high above you. As the flare contracts, fades, and disappears, you see another light. It's a plane swooping towards you. Another flare bursts, dropping from the plane. The helicopter pilot must have set out a mayday signal and given his position before he went down. If it hadn't been for your flare, the rescue plane might have flown past the lake. You fire your remaining flare. As it dies, you notice the other lights. You notice other lights, stars. Tomorrow will be a beautiful day. They'll have you off this lake by the morning, and then you can help them find Jake. The end. Congratulations. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. You grab the waterproof pack containing the matches and flashlight and dive through the door out of the frozen surface of the lake. Seconds later, the helicopter explodes, and a fiery convulsion that breaks the rotting spring ice. A few seconds afterwards, it plunges towards the bottom of the lake. You shine a flashlight on the hole of the ice and say a prayer for the brave pilots who gave their lives to save you. You set out for the shore, shining your flashlight ahead of you. The chopper crashed only half a mile from the shore, and it doesn't take long to reach the rocky ledge jutting out from the lake. The air is chilly, but at least it's above freezing. Nevertheless, you are lost in the remote wilderness. But what's that noise overhead? Is that a light of a plane? Gone. If it was a plane, it flew past. Maybe it will be back. Maybe. Go on to the next page. As you reach the edge of the lake, the sky is growing light in the east. You begin to see the world around you. Pine trees surround the lake and stretch partway up the mountain slopes where they are replaced by shale and rock and ice. Along the shore of the lake you find dry patches of dry pine branches and sticks. By dawn you have a good fire going on the rock ledge thanks to matches. You have only melted snow for water and food, but there's plenty of wood, and you resolve to keep the fire going until you are spotted from the air. 3 days and 3 nights pass and no help comes, and your only consolation is the end of the supply of wood. The fire not only keeps you warm and dry, but helps and keeps your spirits high. But why doesn't help come? Have they written you off as lost, or decided that you have never survived in the subarctic wilderness? You feel yourself growing weaker and weaker by day. Soon you will no longer have the strength to keep the fire going. Then it will all be over. Turn to page 69. I'm pretty sure I've been travelling north from Chilmark Mountain, you say. Okay, Nick replies. Let's hope you're right. Nick gets back on the radio and gives instructions while you wait nervously. Then he turns around and looks at you intently. I reckon you could use something to eat. Maybe some soup and venison, and some raisin bread. That's about all I've got. The simple meal tastes very good, but you're anxious. The sky is darkened and it's beginning to snow. Nick sits down by the fire and takes out a deck of cards. Do you want to play gin rummy? He asks. Sure, you say. Then the 2 of you play gin rummy on a table made of a barrel with a plank on top. You have good luck, but your heart isn't in the game. Suddenly the radio crackles. Nick leaps up and puts on the headphones. A moment later he's smiling broadly. They found your friend Jake and got him aboard the helicopter just before the blizzard began. They say he's going to be okay. Thanks, Nick, you've really saved the day. You did alright yourself, kid, he replies. The end. Congratulations. If you'd like to start again, you can go to the start of the video. But that's the end for you. You wish you could help the boy, but you are too tired, hungry, and weak to take on a huge armed man. You decide the best thing to do you can do for the boy. You decide that the best thing to do is you decide that the best thing you can do for the boy, as well as for Jake, is to get back to civilization as quick as possible. You hurry along the trail. The pine trees along the way grow taller and thicker as the trail ascends. You can't believe that a criminal would take hostage very far into the wilderness. Surely there must be a road nearby, if only you had a map. You've had no idea where you are, and to make matters worse, the temperature has begun to drop sharply. You feel sure that you're just working your way towards the valley. You'll eventually come to a road. At last you reach a partly frozen brook. It shouldn't be a problem. The water can't be more than a feet or so deep. You can easily hop from rock to rock, but you fail to realise how much strength you've lost. Cold and hunger has dulled your senses, and you slip, and your left foot plunges into the icy water. In a second or two you scramble out of the water, but your left foot is soaking wet. You have no matches left to start a fire, and it's getting colder every minute. You keep looking for a road, walking as fast as you can, but within half an hour your left foot has become completely numb. Turn to page 109. You hunch over and hide your face in your arms. A blast deafens you, but you're alive. Was that Chauncey? Are you next? You double over, shaken. The door slams and you open your eyes. Chauncey is staring at you open-mouthed. The radio has been smashed into pieces by the shotgun blast, and Gino's gone. He was too decent to kill us, Chauncey said. He just wanted to make sure we didn't radio for help. Maybe he'll get away. There's a full moon tonight. For a moment, you almost hope he does. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to start of the video. You run for your life, jogging through the pine forest, keeping the sun out on your right. You head east, the land descends steeply. Within 10 minutes or so, you're below the snow line. You'll be harder to track. Far below, you see a tiny ribbon of concrete at the highway. You let out a whoop of joy and run down the path, then slow your pace as you realise that if you trip and sprain your ankle, you'll be in trouble again. Another half an hour is all it takes to reach the highway, and then you wait impatiently. You're able to flag down a car. Fortunately, there's a lumber camp only 10 miles down the road where you quickly telephone the police. You're relieved to be safe, but you won't rest easy until you hear that both Jake and the poor kid are safe too. The end. That's the end for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. You tiptoe inside the cabin. As you reach for a sandwich, a deep voice behind you says, "You can put that back, and then get your hands up." Somehow you awakened the heavy-set man. He's holding a shotgun aimed at your head. Before you know it, he's tied your hands and shoved you down on the butt next to the boy's chair. What's going on? What's going on? You whisper to the boy. Shut up, the man yells. He makes little circles in the air with the muzzle of his gun. Turn to page 91. Slowly, silently, hardly daring to breathe, you push the door open just wide enough to slip through. It creaks and the man in the chair gives a start, as if he's about to wake up. Then he sinks back, still snoring. You take a deep breath. The boy tied to the other chair is watching you intently. You put a finger to your lips and warn him to be quiet. Then you tiptoe past the sleeping man. You pick up the shotgun and the knife and then edge over to the boy. With quick, careful strokes, you cut the ropes behind him to the chair. The boy whispers, "There's a road below the ridge, not too far away. Careful, the thing's loaded." Awakened by the noise, the man leaps from his chair, and you try and swing the gun around, but the man lunges at you. He wrenches the gun out of your hands and sends you sprawling across the floor, out of the corner of your eye, and you see the boy rush to the door. "Don't hurt me," you cry, trying to keep the man distracted. "Stand in that corner and keep your hands up," he shouts. Then, looking around, he yells, "Hey, where did that little devil go?" Turn to page 93. An hour later, when the man goes outside to gather firewood, you and the boy have a chance to talk. "I'm Chauncey Van Dyne," the boy says. "My family's very rich. That's why I'm here. 2 men kidnapped me for hunting from one of our hunting lodges about 20 miles from here at Elk Falls. The other man is trying to collect a ransom, $1 million from my dad. This man, his name is Gino. He says that unless he gets a radio message from his partner by sundown, telling him that he has collected the money, he's going to shoot me, and I guess he'll shoot you too." Can your dad pay $1 million, you ask? "Oh, sure, that's no problem," Chauncey says, "but I'm afraid that Gino's partner won't keep his end of the deal. Once he gets the money, he might not wait around to radio Gino." Go to the next page. "Do you have any ideas what we could do?" you ask Chauncey, but Chauncey can't answer because he's, at the moment, Gino kicks down the door and staggers with an armful of wood. You sit quietly, trying to think of something to do. You start to sweat. Time passes, the sun drops lower in the sky. Finally, Gino steps outside again. Meanwhile, you've had a couple of ideas. They both seem like long shots, but you're desperate. You're trying to pick up one of Gino's knives with your teeth and cut the rope with your hands. Or you could try and reason with Gino, perhaps even make friends with him, so that he wouldn't hurt you and Chauncey. If you try and pick up the knife, turn to page 94. If you try and pick up the knife, turn to page 94. If you decide to talk to Gino when he returns, turn to page 77. With the shotgun in one hand and the knife in the other, he darts to the door. You look around the cabin. There's a label pasted on the radio. The bold red letters on the label read, "Emergency transmission instructions." You read the instructions quickly. Within seconds, you have activated the emergency homing signal, which automatically gives you a bearing to anyone who is monitoring the frequency. Do you have time to escape before the man gets back? The boy said there was a road not too far away. It must be farther down the mountain, but the man might follow you. Or you might get lost. You look out the door at the tracks of the snow. Neither the man or the boy is visible. Even though he knows where he's going, that kid can't get far away. If you decide to run for it, turn to page 87. If you decide to stay in the cabin, turn to page 102. It's now or never. You roll across the floor, seize the knife handle with your teeth, sit up and start to cut the rope binding your wrists together. You won't get much pressure off the knife. You're worried that you'll break your teeth as you bite it, but the knife is sharp as a razor. In a few seconds you've cut through it, and you've also cut your arm. It hurts, the blood is trickling down your arm, but you hardly notice. You quickly cut through the ropes binding your legs and then cut Chauncey's ropes. Turn to page 16. You grab the sleeping bag and jump onto the frozen lake. Seconds later, the helicopter explodes with enough force to break through the ice. You're watching horror as the frigid water clenches the flames and swallows the chopper back into the black depths, taking 2 good men along with it, and leaving you alone in the bleak dark world. You can't see. You don't dare to set out across the ice until dawn. You crawl into the sleeping bag and fall into a pitiful sleep. Turn to page 50. You keep climbing. Your symptoms worsen. You have to stop again and again and catch your breath. Again to cough and catch your breath. You continue to climb one heavy foot in front of another, and your mind too dulled to think of anything else. Suddenly you stop and a gasp of air, but no air comes. You feel as if you are suffocating, and in a sense you are. From a pulmonary edema, a high altitude sickness caused by lack of oxygen. This can be fatal. This time it is. The end. That's the end for you. If you'd like to start the story again, go to the start of the video. You try to tie up Gino, but in a flash he whips around, snarling like an enraged animal. He lunges at Chauncey and grabs the shotgun. You start towards the door, but out of the corner of your eye you see Gino bringing the butt of the gun down on your skull. That's the last thing you'll ever see. The end. That's the end for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. I can't be sure, you say, but I think I've been heading mostly south, so the plane must have crashed in the Broadback Mountain to the north. Okay, says Nick. I'll tell them to try that way first. He snaps his radio headphones and gets the message through to the mountain police. There's nothing more you can do. The two of you play gin rummy for an hour, but your heart isn't in the game. Finally, you quit and stare out the window at the steadily falling snow. Turn to page 106. You sit down on your pack to rest. A fresh wind has sprung up. The sun has disappeared behind the cloud. It's getting colder. You wonder whether you'll make it through the day. You close your eyes and you rest your head on your folded arms. Then you hear a sound overhead. A plane. You leap to your feet, yelling and waving, and the plane dips its wings and circles and flies off. You're still in danger, but you've never been so happy in your life. A helicopter will come soon and pick you up. Your message in the snow has saved you. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. The odds of you making it onto the highway are pretty slim. There's too much danger with that man with a gun that will shoot you. You wait nervously. Soon you see the man returning, shoving the boy ahead of him. You've got to admire that kid. He gave a nice try. A thought flashes through your mind. You switch off the radio. Better not let the man know you've been using it. You slump in a corner and put your head in your arms and pretend to cry. Stop bawling, man. The man yells. Stop bawling! The man yells as he shoves the boy ahead of him. He ties the two of you back to back, and the ropes are painfully tight. You begin to worry about your circulation. After about half an hour, you hear a loud noise overhead. The man looks outside. You hear him cursing. Then, through the open door, you see him run into the woods. The noise grows louder, and the helicopter is landing outside the cabin. Moments later, two policemen storm inside, and you've been saved. So is the boy, and now the helicopter is here, and you guide the police to Jake. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to start a video. Chauncey has the shotgun aimed at Gino, but you're beginning to feel uncomfortable. Gino is glaring at you. His fists are clenched, and you're sure he's been planning something. Look, you whisper to Chauncey. He's getting panicky. If we take our eyes off him, for every second, he could grab this gun in one flying leap. I'll watch you. You rest for an hour. Then I'll rest, and you guard him for an hour. It's going to have to be that way until help comes. Chauncey nods in agreement and hands you the gun. He seems like a tough kid, but he's younger than you. You don't like the thought of taking a nap while he stands guard. By the time an hour has passed, your eyes ache. You'd like to close them for a few seconds, but you don't dare. Chauncey is sound asleep. If you awake Chauncey and let him stand guard, turn to page 110. If you decide it's safer to stand guard yourself, turn to page 107. You want to help Jake, but you feel lucky to have made it to this cabin. No use pushing your luck trying to get back to the plane. After an hour pass, you keep the fire burning and a fiddle with the radio, waiting for help. A whole week passes before anyone comes, and by the time the helicopter finally lands near your cabin, your food supply is almost used up. Have you picked up my friend? You ask the pilot as he steps out of the chopper. He stares at you for a moment as if he hasn't heard, and then nods his head. We picked him up. We dropped supplies. But he didn't have any strength to find them in the snow. We only wish you could have reached him a few days sooner. You don't answer. It's all you can do to fight back the tears. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to start the video. A message comes through. Nick throws his headphones down on the table. The mountains had to call off their search, he says. They pretty much combed the Broadback Mountain without finding a trace of the plane wreck. They were going to check the Mount Chilmark, but by then they were running out into blizzard conditions. They say it might be a couple of days before it lets up enough for them to go back there. Vicious winds in these mountains, you know. Your heart sinks. You must have gone in wrong directions. You feel certain that Jake won't make it. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to start the video. You decide to let Chauncey sleep. You stare at Gino, who finally seems calmer. It looks as if he's catching up on his sleep. The night seems endless. If only the morning would come. Your head nods and you jerk it up as you realise you were beginning to doze. That was a close call. You better be more careful from now on. And you are more careful for an hour or so, but eventually you need to sleep. You just need to sleep overpowers you. You don't hear the man stealing across the room, carefully lifting up the gun out of your lap and pulling the trigger. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to start the video. It seems best to thaw out your foot before walking any further so you get a good fire going, and then take your boots off and sit down in front of it and your legs stretched out to warm your feet. The heat feels good for a minute or so, and then your injured foot begins to hurt. You back away so it won't be heated too rapidly, but it's hurting even more. Hopping on one foot, you pile more wood onto the fire and then sit at the far end of the cabin so your foot won't be heated more than the rest of your body. You prop your foot on a pillow. This helps a little, but your foot begins to hurt even more. It's thawing out, but the pain is worse. It's becoming unbearable. You hop in through the cabin door and throw it out to let the cool air in, but now you can't bear to put any weight on your left foot. Although you have a warm shelter, you're in serious trouble. You can't walk no longer. You might be rescued for days, and in the meanwhile, what are you gonna? What about your foot? Gangrene could set him. Maybe it will have to be amputated. These grisly thoughts run through your mind during the long hours that follow, while you wait for help. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. You lose track of time as you make your way along the ridge that slopes down to the valley and seems to be the safest route off the mountain. You haven't been able to feel your left foot for a long time. Maybe you should have tried to dry it off when you got wet. Now you're afraid it's frozen. But you keep moving. Your view is blocked by pine trees, but at last you find a wide trail. In fact, you've stumbled onto an old logging road. Your spirits rise as you realise this road must lead to a larger road and eventually to civilization. Turn to page 43. You wake up Chauncey. Through the night, you take turns standing guard, changing places every hour. When the morning comes, Gino is still huddled in the corner. Chauncey opens a can of tuna and shoves the plate of tuna and bread across the floor to your prisoner. For a second you think Gino is going to lunge at you instead of taking his breakfast. You level the shotgun right at him. Suddenly Chauncey shrieks, "Yippee!" You're so excited that it's hard to keep the gun level as you hear the whirling racket made by a helicopter landing outside the cabin. Turn to page 58. To whoever finds this letter, as I write this I have not long to live. I broke my leg while searching for the gold that, according to Indian legend, lives in this cave. I found what may be one of the richest veins of gold ore in the world, but all for nothing. No one knows I am here, and I shall never leave this cave alive. I own the deed to this land, and I hereby will to you to have found this cave, all this gold, and the poor pile of bones that was the undersigned. Horace Witherby, the Vancouver, British Columbia. At first you're thrilled about finding the letter. Good luck piled upon good luck. And then you think about the poor man who wrote it. How, in his eagerness to find gold, he lost his life. Greed can be dangerous, it seems. Maybe it's not a good idea to go after the gold. The thought of returning to that cave gives you the chills. You've got plenty of time to think about it, and meanwhile you give $50,000. You've got $50,000. You might just go out and buy a new stereo, or even buy Jake a new airplane. The end. And that's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start again, go to the start of the video. The creek winds along a gentle slope, but you have to make your way along the boulders. Jagged peaks rise on either side, then your path descends steeply. At times you have to face the rock as you climb down, holding onto your hands and feet. At least you're more sheltered from the wind, and you know the air will be warmer when you reach a lower altitude. But the farther you go, the less confident you feel that you're headed towards the ranger station. Finally, you realise that you took the wrong trail. Turn to page 44. But you're still worried about your foot. You sit down and take off your left boot. You touch your foot gently in several places and then press your toes firmly. There's no feeling at all. Your toes and your front part of your foot look greyish white, and there doesn't seem to be any doubt about it. At least half your foot is frozen. You slip your numb left foot back into your boot, and it would take about half an hour to reach the highway. You know there will be cars and trucks on the big road like that. Someone to rescue you, but you feel so tired and weak. You could build a fire to warm your foot. Walking back would be easier if you had your strength back. If you build a fire in order to thaw out your foot, turn to page 108. If you set for the highway right away, go to the next page. You walk down the road as quick as possible. Cold and tired as you are, you have new energy from the feeling that you're going to make it. The road is fairly steep and your foot feels as if it's made of solid rock. You've made good progress. At last you reach the highway. For a long, cold 20 minutes you walk along the highway, looking both ways in hope of seeing an oncoming car. Finally you see a truck coming along. You stand in the middle of the road and wave it down. You tell the driver about the plane crash and your efforts to help Jake. "I think my foot may be frozen," you add. "Lucky for you," the driver says. "There's a residence mountain to Cartwright. That's a lumber camp about 20 miles down the road. They should be able to get a medic pretty quickly." Go to the next page. After an hour later, you're sitting in a pool on a stool in a medical clinic in Cartwright. Your foot is thawing in a bucket of very warm water. It hurts even with the painkillers you've just taken. You're smiling. The mountaineer has just given you two great pieces of news. Your foot is going to be okay, and the helicopter team has safely lifted Jake off the mountain. The end. That's the end of the video for you. If you'd like to start the video again, if you'd like to start the story again, go to the start of the video. And that's it.